Good afternoon, everyone. We're again down here at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. We're in a short break and recess just through lunch, and we've just got a few minutes to give you a quick update. But as of yet this morning, we have had no witnesses absolutely at all for the defense. We've been in motions and arguments all morning. The jurors have been in a back room and haven't been permitted to come in and listen to anything that we've had to say. We know that two of our main witnesses have been denied this morning before we even had one witness on the stand. So we haven't even had a single witness on the stand yet, and they're already wanting to proper witnesses before they get on the stand. They're excluding witnesses, denying them to be on the stand to testify. Margaret Houston has been a big part of this whole case, and she is totally denied to testify, and they've known the whole time that she was going to testify. She has been excluded and is not allowed to testify, and also Corey Houston, a relative of hers that's from out there by Mesquite also, is being denied to testify. We are not allowed to talk about anything about the cows or the dead cows. It has nothing to do with it. Anything to do with the arrest of Dave Bundy. Dan Love's being denied for us to bring him in to testify.
Anything outside of the wash?
Anything outside of the wash area today, we're finding out we're being denied any of this testimony except for the day of the 12th inside the wash area or on the bridge. We're seeing government tyranny at its largest today, more than any time in any of these past trials, and it's totally absurd and totally wrong what they're doing. So again, it's almost 1 o'clock. We have not got a single witness to testify on the stand in front of the jurors. The jurors have not come in. We're hoping the jurors come in here shortly after lunch. I'll let Andrea tell you a few things that she's got on the notes today, and we'll keep filling in some stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, so we went in and they had the 29A motions. A lot of the motions were that there's zero evidence, especially for the conspiracy, that some of these folks had any part of it. 3 of them drove the truck to the protest and back. So there was no discussion of what was going on or going to happen. There was no evidence that they were part of a militia, radio evidence, that they had radio communication between the 2 of them. And then they just went to the wash to watch the cows come home. The assault reads, the jury instructions read, the element says they have to be aware they were being assaulted, and that the agents already had fear prior to them arriving, so that one should have been dropped. And then the extortion. The order was about the cattle roundup. So when they put that out, that the impound and the order was already over, how can they extort something that's already over? The judge goes in to say that the sheriff said Gold Butte will be open, but not that it was open currently. She also said the 924, there was some arguments about the 924Cs and how there's 3 of them and there should only be 1. They argued that they should all be dropped, but if they weren't, that only 1 should be dropped because you can't have multiple 924Cs based on the same action. And she argued that one, you do not need to point a weapon for it to be an assault on an officer. Merely having a weapon that an officer can see is assaulting an officer. And then they quoted U.S. versus Castaneda, there can be multiple charges based on the same evidence. She also said if you have a gun and go into a bank and say, "Give me the money," that statement is not protected by the First Amendment, and the gun is not protected by the Second. The same thing here, where the mob has guns going down to intimidate the officers and yells, "Give us the cows back," and that's the same thing to her. She also said, if you're a conspirator, even if your part is small, you are still responsible for the actions of everyone and the entire actions of the conspiracy. Stating if you're in a bank robbery, the getaway driver is still charged with the actions of the other individuals inside the bank. This is a general intent crime, and the defense does not need to have intended harm. We go into Dan Love and the motion to compel Dan Love to testify. And she says that there's no need to have Dan Lev come in. Other people have already testified to it. She said she's not going to go into the sheriff if the sheriff has authority to release government property, because that was one of their arguments. She also said non-relevant things like beliefs in the if the court order was legal, religious beliefs and political beliefs are not going to be allowed. If the witness needs to talk to if they need lawyers. So any witness we're bringing is going to have to be talked to by the judge first and given a lawyer before they're able to testify.
Unindicted co-conspirator.
Jackson got up and said if the government is threatening the witnesses with charges if they testify, this is grounds for dismissal. That was also denied, and the CJO office needs to be here so that they can call witnesses, and that's all I've got right now.
So we're seeing witness intimidation big here. And we want to make that point very plain out here to everyone. Every single witness that the defendants want to bring at this point has to have an attorney before they can testify, and they're being threatened with prosecution. The government says this is still an ongoing case and they cannot talk about it, who's under investigation and what they're doing. But they are wanting to make sure that every witness is proffered, has got an attorney, and the government wants to make them understand that they could be prosecuted yet in this case, and they're being threatened with that. The government also is calling the witnesses lay witnesses. They're not professional witnesses. They says we have lay witnesses running around that don't know anything and that are just seeing stuff wherever they're at the protest or at the wash. They're lay witnesses and they are not qualified to testify in this case. We had all these professional government witnesses, hundreds of them, dozens of them, all FBI, BLM, government officials that have testified in this trial the whole time. And they're considered professional witnesses. Some of them wasn't even there. They just looked at all these Facebook posts, but they're still considered professionals at what they've done. The lay witnesses are not professional, and there need to be proffered or possibly an attorney before they can testify. Jury nullification was brought up several times today by the prosecutor and the judge both. And they said that we don't want to risk the jurors with jury nullification. We can't risk the jurors to hear some of this stuff that the defense witnesses may have to say because jury nullification may be brought in. The prosecutors and the judge understand this very clearly, and they keep bringing this up and say it's irrelevant. And they want to make sure that jury nullification is not at all a part of this trial. One of the things we keep being told that we can't have any emotions, outburst, we can't, no expressions, this is told to us every single day in this court. And I'm going to reference the prosecutors today as the Four Stooges. These Four Stooges over there, their body language, they're shaking their head. We're not allowed to do none of this. They're over there trying to give orders to the judge, shaking their head, yes and no at different things that deny or this and that, when the judge is supposed to make these decisions up on her own without them trying to give it to her. All four of these Four Stooges are over there to the side, shaking their head, non-stop, giving all kinds of body language before the judge even gets a chance to make these motions. And they're not reprimanded, they're not told anything. But if we have any body language, we make any smiles or remarks or shake our head, we're reprimanded or even removed from the courtroom. One of the other things the government's saying that these witnesses can't talk about things is that about how the government or the BLM showed force. They said there's no evidence that the BLM showed force, and there's no argument against that we can't bring any argument or witnesses in showing that the government showed force, such as Margaret Houston's testimony. The jurors would be tainted, and that could be signs of jury nullification to give to them, and they don't want her testimony. So that's one reason she's been denied to testify. These are some of the things that I've got for you. We're going to have to rush here just quickly, but Doug Knowles has something to say here about Gary Hunt. We want to bring him in, and we're going to have you a more update. Did you want to do that, Doug?
Sure, that's fine.
Yes.
I been speaking to Gary. I spoke to him again this morning. He's in good spirits. He's in Sacramento County Main Jail, waiting to be transported. There's some concern that they might diesel him. The federal defender, I spoke with him today, is insisting that because he's on a civil hold instead of a criminal hold, that won't happen, but he will help us if it does. So Gary wants to thank everybody for their support, and again, he's asking that nobody contact his family or his home. It's kind of a touchy situation there, and doesn't want his family disturbed. If you have an ability to and would like to contribute, there's a page on my website, itmattershowyousstand.com. It's Gary Hunt, Freedom of Speech, and you can donate there if you're interested. Everything that anybody could do would be very much appreciated. Gary is not employed, he's retired and low income. So thanks, guys.
Thanks. So we had the courtroom packed out today. We've had people as far away as from Colombia, South America. We've had people from Arizona, Utah, Illinois, Montana, Idaho, all over. I think there's some people here maybe today even from Washington. So we appreciate all the support of the people that came down here today. I know there's a lot more coming throughout the week. We are going to start having a full courtroom the next 2 weeks, and that's awesome. The more the merrier. We appreciate it. We need everybody we can get.
Has anybody filed anything to impeach the judge?
I know there's stuff out there. These attorneys, I don't think have filed anything to impeach a judge. I think they think it's almost hopeless at this point, but I know there's people out here trying. I know that you have something else to say too.
I think one of the big things that they're arguing inside today is that the third-party witnesses cannot state anything about their fear. They're not going to let any testimony to a third-party witness and their fear into the courtroom. They're also saying that there is no defense. You are not allowed to try the defense of I was in self-defense of myself against these officers. That is not going to be allowed. Although it did say they were arguing the defense of protecting other people. It's really convoluted because if you talk about third party, they've brought in Metro police officers and Nevada Highway Patrol, but they're not federal agencies, and so that would be considered a third party. And they're saying, well, because they're law enforcement, they're not considered a third party. So what they're basically saying is, we're allowed to put in all this evidence, we're allowed to bring up third party fears, we're allowed to do all this, you can't bring that up at all. In fact, they're saying none of our witnesses can come in and testify to pretty much anything because they're third party. And so they're basically trying to make it so the only defense we have is for each individual defendant to get up and testify for himself.
And just to clarify, these people that are so considered third party are people that were actually at the wash firsthand.
Yes, these third party people were at the wash for sure, and the ones that they're allowing to come in, again, are being threatened. Witness intimidation, threatened with arrest, and possibly indictment. And they're under investigation, and this is an ongoing investigation. The prosecutors stated again in court on record that this is an ongoing investigation, that there are multiple people that were there that possibly still could be arrested. And these people that testify need to talk to attorneys, they are telling them, before they testify, because their testimony could be held against them. And so far we've had no witnesses. We're hoping to have our first witness here right after lunch. They're probably already starting back up in court. We're running a little bit late, but they've already kicked off some of our first main witnesses. Again, that was Margaret Houston and a close relative, Corey Houston, that have been denied to testify again today. And their testimony was crucial to the defense team, and they're not being allowed. So that's about. What, you guys something to say?
I want to say one thing. By this judge's reasoning, by this court's reasoning, the Patriots in 1776 would have been guilty of conspiracy against King George in the Redcoats. Remember that. By their interpretation, we would not have had 1776 the revolution. It would never have happened. It would all been conspiracy, and everybody would have been hung for conspiracy.
Are you going in, Court?
The way this court's being ran is nothing but the witches' courts up here for sure. We see the Salem witch hunts here in the United States years ago. We're also seeing this that happened in Nazi Germany. This kind of thing is totally wrong for these people that are being accused of something, these so-called crimes, that not even be able to bring witnesses against for themselves, and that they can prove their innocence. It's the first day of it, so.
Isn't it true that the prosecution had free reign for over 5 weeks?
7 weeks. We're in week 7. We're day 23 here today of actual court days. So 23 days of actual solid court days, week 7, and they've had free reign to bring in dozens and dozens and dozens of witnesses, and hours and hours. Some of them spent 2 or 3 days on the stand, some of these witnesses did.
And now they are shutting down defense, is that correct?
They're shutting down the defense. We've argued all morning up until lunch, and we've not been allowed to bring one witness in so far. We've actually brought in attorneys to talk to these witnesses before they testify, and we haven't even started yet. And already kicking out other witnesses that they're not allowed to testify. Witnesses that were there firsthand are being called third-party witnesses, and they're not allowed to talk about. They're not allowed to talk about any fear. The witnesses don't qualify for fear. The BLM was the only ones allowed to fear for their lives. They're not allowed to talk about any of the abuse that the BLM done or mismanagement of anything or their conduct. They're not allowed to bring in Dan Love, and they're not allowed to talk about any of like Dave Bundy's arrest, Margaret Houston's how she was treated by the BLM, Ammon Bundy, how he was tased. None of this is allowed to be talked about, or the witnesses, we can't bring them in at this time, or how the cows were killed. Nothing about the cows can be brought in. So,
one of the things that they said was they don't want the jury back in deliberation trying to decide if the BLM was right in their actions or not, and that's why they won't allow them to bring any of those facts in. They said that that's not a place for the jury to be deciding. The jury should be deciding if these guys did the crime or not if how the BLM was acting was lawful.
So we need to get this out there, everybody. We need to spread the word. We need to tell how this court here is abusing people's constitutional rights, abusing their rights. This needs to be spread wide and far. We need politicians to get involved. We need this to be shared and told how these courts are abusing everybody's rights.
Are there any news channels here reporting on this?
No legit news channels. There's a couple of Twitter people here today, but no real media that's here that has, like Channel 8's not here again today. The local news, I haven't seen any of them except just local Twitter people.
And do you know if Channel 8 had the last run talking about Greg Burleson?
They did have the last run. Channel 8 did a little briefing up here just before we went into recess about 10 days ago, and they talked about Greg Burleson and the Patriots out here and the supporters in a bad light, but they did not give anything good, or mostly. They were just talking about how he threatened people.
And they forgot to mention the fact that he was an undercover agent for the federal government?
They 100% did not mention that Greg Burleson had worked as an undercover agent at all. The media did not cover that at all.
So do you agree that that was a false narrative?
It definitely was a false narrative. It definitely was. So if there's not any more questions, we're going to take off back up to court. We'll be back as close to 5 o'clock as we can. We do not know how long the court's going to last, one way or the other today. But we will be back as quick as we can, right around 5 o'clock, to give you another update.
Okay, so, guys,
thank you.
That building right there is where all the tyrannical government officials are working. Have a good one.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're out of court early today. We're in recess till tomorrow morning. Court didn't go near as planned as we thought it would this morning. We was all pumped up and ready to go with our witnesses. The defense had all their witnesses lined out, and we spent all morning arguing whether we was going to use these witnesses or whether we was going to proffer them before they testified. And the government just picked off one at a time by either telling us they're not going to testify because they didn't have anything to testify about that was irrelevant to this case, or that intimidation of the witness, that they might even arrest these witnesses. So at this point, we have no witnesses that it looks like is going to testify. The defense team is going to spend the rest of the afternoon and the evening deciding what their plan is, strategy for tomorrow. We might only have Eric Parker testify at this point. That might be our only option. And then this case may be over within just a couple of days. Andrea, I'll turn it over to her and let her give you some more detailed information here on some of the afternoon's outcome.
So when we went back in, they had a gentleman, and I didn't catch his name. They didn't have him spell it, and they were saying it kind of lightly. Who they brought in a lawyer, and we waited for the lawyer to show up. We waited for the lawyer to go through with him and talk to him about his statements and what he's going to say in oath, his testimony, and if he was still going to go through with it, because if he does, he could be charged. After we waited, they brought him in, and the judge then gave him another talking to. She said, you know, if you lie on stand, you could be charged with perjury. It was a harassment or something to that fact, where they're trying to intimidate him into not testifying. At the end, she asked if he was still willing to testify, and he said yes. And Eric Parker and a few others teared up. Eric was actually crying in the courtroom because he feels very strongly that he does not want anyone to get themselves into trouble to testify for him. And the fact that this gentleman was willing, even at the face of all of this, even coming in to testify, you're all of a sudden appointed a lawyer and sent into a room with a lawyer to talk to you about your testimony, to make sure that you still want to do it. And then when you still decide, yes, I'm going to do it, you go into the courtroom and the judge starts to talk to you and gives you all these statements about, if you lie, you will be charged with perjury and taken out of the courtroom in handcuffs. And even through all of that, he was still willing to testify on their behalf. So it was very good. Then they did say there were a few other people that were going to come in, but they were deciding whether they can do it because they needed all their witnesses to do their story, and only having a few may not come across as well as their entire plan. At that moment, Eric Parker said that he will testify. The judge was talking to him about perjuring himself and what kind of ramifications come from making your own testimony.
So what were you saying?
And he's told her, the court has left me no other option than to testify. And he wanted to go into the fact that if they are not allowed to call their witnesses, if the truth is not allowed in the courtroom, what other choice does he have than to testify? And she laughed and said, that's your right. You have a right to testify and you have a right not to. And then continues to talk about the perjury and the cross-examination. It looked like they were only looking at 4 more witnesses. So this trial could be over by Wednesday. They could have stuff tomorrow, and they're going to talk about jury instructions, and then into Wednesday, and this could be over. We need people down here. We need to see people down here. The courtroom was full today, but let's go for standing room only. Let's fill the other side of the courtroom too. If our side's full, we get to sit on the other side too. And there would be nothing that would make me happier to see that side of the courtroom filled as well. I know after Eric said that he was going to testify, the special agent in charge of the entire investigation got up and left the room. So they're going to come at him hard and strong, and we need your prayers. We need your prayers to stand with Eric, to stand with these guys who will testify on the behalf of in this trial and the future trials. We need you to talk to your friends about it. Tell people, don't let the injustice go by without being witnessed.
The witness, Andrea, is Garrett Frenner.
Garrett what?
Garrett Frenner.
Garrett Frenner. I couldn't hardly pronounce that name. That was the witness today that agreed to testify on the behalf of the witness of the defense team here and of the defendants. And he was standing strong, and you can tell that guy was nervous and he was scared. He's being threatened. The prosecutors were talking to his lawyer right there in the courtroom pretty bluntly, and they was also following that attorney outside the courtroom with this Garrett Frenner. I know it starts with an F, Frenner. And so that this guy did not get to testify today because of the outcome of what all happened. If we seem just a little bit distracted here, we've had a marshal come up and talk to us and tell us that we might not be able to be up here when we've had permission to be up here in the last couple of weeks. They gave us. It was okay. He said it was okay. So they was kind of asking us what we were doing here again and distracting us just slightly. But the intimidation down here has been quite strong off and on. In the courtroom, the intimidation has been bad. Out here for the people that are flying the flags and flying the signs in support of the guys and the political prisoners, the intimidation off and on as the marshals change out hands every 2 weeks sometimes gets pretty tense for people, and it intimidates them not to want to come back. The Constitution isn't allowed to be carried in the courtroom properly like this. We have to turn it around. We was told again today that we had to turn around our constitutions and turn them around backwards to either enter the courtroom and even in the courthouse as we go through security. It's the injustice that's being done here to the American people is horrible. Only having Eric Parker possibly testify on the behalf of the defendants and himself in his case is horrendous that this kind of thing is having to happen. Threatening witness intimidation by the federal government, it's wrong. They're setting a stage that they want to set the stage to find these guys guilty of crimes they didn't do, and all the crimes they have. So, being told the battery might be going dead, so we might have to cut this short. But we will be here tomorrow again at 8:30 for court. The jurors are supposed to be back tomorrow, and we are not for sure what's going to exactly happen tomorrow. It looks like Eric Parker will be testifying tomorrow on his behalf, and that might be our only witness in this whole case for the defendants. And then we'll be going into closing arguments and jury instructions, and that's about it. It's all over. It looked like. So
today we only had the jury in the courtroom for maybe 30 minutes of the entire day.
At the most, they got to hear opening arguments from Eric Parker, which he withheld his right for that opening arguments from the very first part of the trial 7 weeks ago. He reserved that right, and today the only thing the jurors got to hear at all were the opening arguments from Eric Parker's attorney, and that's it. You got to wonder what these jurors are thinking. What's going on in their mind? Why are they sitting in a room in the back, not hearing nothing that's going on, not hearing not even a half of the evidence? The prosecutors got over 5,000 exhibits of Facebook files, and they played and watched little bits and pieces of this, the scary parts, and we're not even allowed to have anything of emotion from any witnesses to express how scared these witnesses are or why their state of mind, why they showed up there in support, to support these people. There was hundreds of people there in the wash, hundreds, and some of them came there just for a short time or just a couple hours, even less than 24 hours, such as Eric Parker and Steve Stewart and Scott Drexler. They didn't know anybody there. They came there for just a short time. They can't even bring witnesses there that can corroborate this and tell what happened. It's just the prosecutors and the judge today both mentioned, and I got to bring this up again, jury nullification. They're afraid that these witnesses might somehow bring up or enact some kind of jury nullifications in the minds of the jurors, and they said that can't happen. They do not want the jurors at all they say that they don't believe it. They definitely do not believe that jury nullification is right. The judge and the prosecutors don't, and they don't want the jurors to nullify any of this case on that standard there. We also know this case should be dismissed on several things that have happened in this case, and the judge refused. Every one of our motions today were denied. Not one single motion do we want.
Not just today, but every day.
Every day.
We don't get any of our motions going through. And the government, all of their motions go right through. So there's definitely a bias by this judge, and there's no truth, and there's no real facts in the courtroom.
So the judge again said, here's her exact words, the risk of jury nullification for the jurors to hear about different defense witnesses, that can't happen. And so she cannot take the risk of jury nullification if the jurors hear something from the defense witnesses. And so she would rather not have witnesses for the defense and deny them that right in case something happens of jury nullification. And we need people down here, again, as Andrea said, we need the courtroom packed out. We need outside packed out here. We need peaceful protesters out here, peaceful people witnessing this corruption. If they do get found guilty up here, the way the prosecutors want, we need people witnessing this so that when we have these appeals, that these witnesses that can file these affidavits and things that witness this. Because don't take it just from us sitting in the courtroom all these weeks. Andrea's been here every day of it for 7 weeks and hasn't missed a day. And she's seen this corruption. We need more people that are here. Her husband's life is at stake. They have children at home that Eric hasn't got to see in 15 months now. And this injustice needs to be brought to a light. We need more people out here. We've got people today out here from as far as South America, out of Colombia, that came in here today. A fine gentleman. We've got people from Illinois, Utah. It's awesome to see all these people here. Arizona. I know I'm going to probably miss some people. I know some people who are here from Washington, and myself from Montana. But we need tons more people here. Not just, and we got other people from Idaho here and even Ohio that's been here for months in support of Rhode Island. People that's been here supporting the men yet are still out there in Trump facing trial. But they're alone, and we all need the support here, the moral support. However you can support us if you can't come. However you can support, they need it out here desperately. They desperately do.
If you can't believe the injustice that we're talking about, you should see the injustice inside the courtroom. You know, when we come out and we tell you what's going on, it's a small amount of what's going on in that courtroom. And it's harder for them to continue this with the more people sitting in the stands. The more people that are downstairs, it makes it harder for them. The more people that can write and say, I was in the courtroom, I witnessed the bias, that makes it harder for them. So if you can, if there's any way possible that you can get here for us, we would really appreciate it.
We really would.
Don't forget the motion about Dan Love.
Yeah, Dan Love again, totally denied. We're not allowed to use him at all, absolutely at all. He was the main agent there. We've seen this in the Oregon trial I did personally, where the people that shot Lavoie, we don't know their names yet. Dan Love was directly involved in this 100%. That witness we need to bring in here. We're not allowed to bring him in. They bring in FBI agents that never was even there. FBI agents that all they did was sit on a computer and go through Facebook, and they was professional witnesses viewing things that happened after the fact, 2 years later. And most of the witnesses here were not even there in the wash. We're not even there at the Bundy Ranch. Hundreds of these witnesses, dozens of these witnesses were brought in against these people. People that were first-hand witnesses, such as the supporters there, are called lay witnesses today. They're not even allowed to testify because they might show some type of emotions that might set the jurors to think of jury nullification and nullify this case as they really should.
Not to mention that Dan Love was one of the main testimonies in the grand jury indictment.
That's right.
How can you be one of the main testimonies in the grand jury indictment and then all of a sudden your testimony is irrelevant to the case?
Yep.
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So whatever help you guys can give us out there, I know we've got people from all over trying to help, different politicians trying to help, but we need more of these people to stand up and take charge and do their job as public servants should, and help these men out, find out the true facts in the case, and this case needs to be dismissed and not go any further. It really does.
Has there been any march around the courthouse in protest of these decisions?
We really haven't ever had any march around the courthouse. It's kind of secluded out here, but we would love that support if we could. But there hasn't been none down here that I know of personally. But a lot of people standing out front, a lot of faithful people that's been here for weeks and weeks and weeks, every single day, bringing water, setting up flags. I mean, I can't even go into all the details that they've done. There's been so much, and it's been awesome to have them. But we do need more people like that. We need to unite. We need people here to help us unite. Let them know that we're here. We care about these people, and we want this injustice to stop against these American people. We talked to one of the marshals a while ago, and I asked him about the sound of music. I said, we need a marshal like him that's going to not going to buckle. He's going to stop this tyranny himself. And he said he knew about the sound of music, and he knew that one Nazi in that movie or whatever had turned bad against his family and stuff. And I said, that's what you are. I said, why don't you stand up and make a point and not let this tyranny happen? Why do you keep bugging us and pestering us and intimidating us? And he said he agreed with me. I've been on good, friendly terms with him ever since we've been here. But we need to be good to them, but we need to put a bug in their ear that we're Americans. They're here to protect us. They work for us, and we want what's right for this country, the same as they should.
The power lies with we the people. Let's start showing them that that's the truth.
Exactly.
We need thousands to show up here, please.
Exactly. Thousands. We need thousands to show up.
Send a message.
If you can't come, if there's no way you can come, there's still things. Share this. Talk to people. Knowledge is power. And that's what they're trying to prevent in the courtroom. They're trying to prevent that jury from getting any knowledge about what really happened. Knowledge is power. Share it with your friends.
Is anybody calling the news channels to tell them what's going on so they can try to cover this?
If we can, we need to call the news channels. We need to get them, challenge them to do the right thing, to report actually what's happening here, and not just bits and pieces of the fake news or the scary part that they're just taking a little bit out of it and acting like somebody's scary and threatening people. But nobody's threatening anybody down here. We've all of us have been peaceful. We're here to support other Americans that have loved their neighbor, that went out on a call to help someone in need. So if there's no more questions,
and if they don't show up, there will be no more protests in this country if these men get convicted.
Our rights are gone. If you don't show up now and you don't do this, don't wait till tomorrow. It's over with. If you think you have gun rights and you have constitutional rights, they are disappearing so fast. They're gone yesterday. This case relies on the freedom of our children and our grandchildren and our future. It definitely does.
If the feds win this case, is it correct that anybody that's on Facebook pertaining to anything can be a co-conspirator?
Yes.
If you share a news article, you're in part of a conspiracy. If you share a video of a police officer assaulting someone that didn't need it, unlawfully, you're part of a conspiracy against the government. If you try to help spread information, you're part of a conspiracy.
They said today
if they win.
Let's go ahead. The prosecutor said today that this is still an ongoing investigation.
Yes.
Anybody can jump into this conspiracy today or yesterday or anytime. It don't matter. You didn't have to be at the Bundy Ranch to be part of this conspiracy. You can join it at any time. Just by logging into this live stream, you could possibly, the way they're wording things in here, you could possibly be joining a conspiracy. That's the rights you're losing. The First Amendment's...
You're saying pretty much this is a direct attack on the First Amendment.
It's definitely a direct attack on the First Amendment, and you're going to lose your Second Amendment right that easy.
Well, and they were talking about in there today that you don't need to point a weapon at an officer to assault them. purely having your weapon with you near an officer is assaulting an officer. So not only is your First Amendment, but your Second Amendment is also on trial upstairs. And we all know how case law works. If they get a conviction here, it's set in stone. Do you guys like your amendments? Do you like your freedom of speech? Do you like your right to bear arms? Well, we all got to do something.
Take it down here.
One other thing they told this one potential witness the day that did not testify, Garrett Frenner. They told him that he could actually go question by question for his Fifth Amendment rights. That if he did not want to answer any question, he can invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. Judge Brown over there in Portland told witnesses over there if they got on the stand, they invoked their Fifth Amendment rights by just starting their questions. But here, this judge is warning these witnesses that they don't have to answer nothing. She never told this to any of the government witnesses. They just got to ramble on and on for sometimes days at a time. But this witness was told that he didn't have to answer anything. At any moment, he could talk and ask for a break. He could invoke his Fifth Amendment right on any question that he didn't want to answer. And that's been unheard of to me in any of these cases.
So this is an attack on the First and Second Amendment, and more specifically, the Second Amendment being attacked. Where are all the Republican politicians?
Exactly.
Where's the NRA?
Where's the NRA? Where are these politicians that are supposed to be supporting our rights and that are working for us? We need them here witnessing this themselves in court. I got to look up a name later of a guy, a 7-term politician I was told about today from another gentleman here, that he's a politician from Idaho, and he's a 7-term politician, and he was arrested for sticking up for people. And he said this is why other politicians are scared. He was so subject to diesel therapy for 1 year. His family did not even know where this politician was for 1 year as he was transferred for all over the country in federal prisons. And I'll get his name. I have it here wrote down somewhere. I might not be able to find it at the moment, but this politician's from Idaho, and he's a 7-term. His name is George Nelson, I was told, if I got the name right. And he's a 7-term congressman, and because of him fighting the IRS for the people of the United States out of Idaho, he was sent to prison, and waiting trial, he got put on diesel therapy. And they said the term diesel therapy was termed because of how they treated this politician. And for over a year, his family didn't know where he was at. The U.S. Marshals took him into custody and transferred him all over the United States with diesel therapy from prison to prison to prison to holding facility. And this is one of the reasons that
George Nelson, 7-term congressman.
Yep, 7-term congressman. And most politicians know of this case and are scared to speak up. But it's time they need to speak up.
George Nelson.
George Nelson.
Google it.
Yeah, Google that name and see where your rights have been lost a long time ago and why these politicians don't want to stand up. Why are they so scared? The BLM talked about being scared up here. What about the people? What about these witnesses being scared? What about witness intimidation? It's against the law to intimidate witnesses. We've seen it in Portland, witnesses being intimidated by FBI, and we've seen it again here. And we definitely need your support.
And don't forget about Jackson standing up and asking for dismissal for intimidation of witnesses.
Yep, Mr. Jackson, Greg Burleson's attorney, made that point clearly today, that because the federal government's intimidating these witnesses was also big grounds for dismissal, and that was denied also again. So I think that's all we about have for you today. We will be back tomorrow, so about noon again tomorrow. Approximately, we'll have another update, if not before, as soon as anything important comes up, but for sure by noon.
Could you put today in 3 words?
The biggest
tyranny.
It's the biggest injustice and tyranny.
Tyranny in action.
In action, yes, for sure.
Tyranny on display.
Definitely. Well, God bless. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing whoever can be back here tomorrow.
All right. Thanks.